Last year was a very analog year for me. Many hours were dedicated to crafts. Currently finishing up this very fluffy, skinny striped shawl. But one of the big benefits of doing crafts is that it does allow you to listen to a lot of audiobooks. So last year I spent about 212 hours listening to audiobooks, and that took up 66% of my reading. I ended up reading 35 books in the last year, and as always, I am sharing my favorites with you today. According to Storygraph, my main vibes were emotional, dark, and mysterious, which is fair. I have my favorite genres. Every year, literary comes higher and higher up the list, especially over the last 2 years. I've really focused in on specific genres that I know I love. I think I've tried for the longest time to read outside of the genres that I know I love, to just try it out, and then I just end up reconfirming that I like the genres I already like. And it's okay, because I don't need to like all books. But this year I've actually had the chance to, by focusing in on those genres, I've also had the chance to be disappointed within those genres. So I feel like I've sort of given myself the quest to find those 5-star reads within the particular genres that I like. But unfortunately, that also comes alongside some disappointment sometimes. So before I get to my favorites, let me share some books with you that I've had for a while that unfortunately didn't live up to what I was hoping they were going to be. For some books, they promise a certain thing and they don't deliver on that. And for other books, they deliver on it, but the execution isn't great. It is what I thought it was going to be, but just not the best version of it. Not biggest disappointment of the year, but one that was going so well, The Witches of Vardo. There is a bit of a theme where I have a bunch of hardbacks that I've then listened to the audiobook of and then not enjoyed it, so some of these will be going to the charity shop. This book is set in Norway in 1662, and I have a long-standing theme of loving historical witch books. I have so many of them, and many of them I've not yet read. So I'm currently making my way through, and this was really promising. I love a protagonist who is a young, slightly rebellious, courageous teenage girl. They're in this fisherman's town, and the men leave to go fishing every year, and then someone comes in and accuses women of witchcraft, of course, because they have their own ulterior motives. I loved the initial setting and the characters, and then halfway through, the pacing of this book slowed down so much, and I feel like it kind of lost itself there. And then at the very end, I'm talking the last 15-20 pages, that were plot twists and action, all these things that happened. So I think started out really great and then lost itself sort of halfway. Then I have The Bass Rock. This I've had for so many years. This is definitely what Ariel and Raylene from book podcast Books Unbound would call a mashed potato book. I've had this for so long. It's also one in a series of multiple books that I own where it's 3 women with 3 stories set in different time periods. This is one of those books where it did do what it said it was going to, but I just didn't love the execution of it. You have a woman who gets accused of witchcraft. I liked that story. Then there is, just after the Second World War, a woman who marries a widower with 2 kids, and it turns into an abusive relationship. And then there's a contemporary story of a woman who is cleaning out the house of her dad who's passed away, and it's definitely about violence against women. It has really short vignettes that are then also put in between the other stories, and I think maybe there was a little bit too much going on. There are subtle relationships between some of the stories, and they're all set in a similar location because the Bass Rock sort of plays a small part in each of their stories as well. So it's not one that I wouldn't recommend, but it's also not quite what I was hoping it was going to be. I thought I was going to absolutely love this. I also listened to the audiobook for this. Got 3 different narrators, and one of them does an accent for one of the characters that is wild. And then finally, Study for Obedience. This was shortlisted for something. It had a tag from the bookshop in it. Shortlisted for the Booker, maybe? This felt like such a nothing book. This is definitely the side of literary fiction where I'm I do need something to happen. The young woman goes back to live with her brother to be a housekeeper, and then strange things start happening in the town, and has something in common with Cursed Bread by Sophie McIntosh, but I definitely preferred this because I'm honing in closer and closer on what I like. It does mean that I'm reading a bunch of iterations of the same idea sometimes, but it's fun because then I get to pick my favorites, and this was a favorite from previous years. Unfortunately, this one was not for me. Then there are also a few books that I did not finish. DNFed. I've really enjoyed sharing those over previous years because I think that says quite a lot. I put a lot of books on pause. I intend to pick those up, but these are ones that I've sort of given up on. So Penance, you will see some more Eliza Clark later in this video, but Penance was not for me. It discusses true crime. I got a few hours into it. I just knew that I think the format of it I was not going to enjoy. So I passed that on to a friend. The Memory Please, I listened to like an hour of the audiobook and was bored out of my mind. I read a lot of apocalyptic and dystopian books, so it was in the list of that. Again, don't think that the writing was for me. It is set in a place where people slowly start losing words. It's kind of like a play on 1984, but yeah, that one's gone. I have plenty of other things in that genre to read. Then controversially, Braiding Sweetgrass. I actually thought this was a beautiful book, and I listened to about half of it, and oddly, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I just wasn't compelled to keep going with it. I had it from the library and I kept sort of renewing it and not listening to it. So in the end I thought, I'm ready to let this one go, even though I enjoyed it very much. So much like wisdom and beautiful moments in there, but I let it go. And finally there was Luck and Booth, which is historical fiction again, sort of set in some different time frames with some different characters, all set in a very particular place in Edinburgh, and this was so chaotic. Maybe I should have read the physical instead of listening to the audiobook, but I couldn't quite parse what was going on. The style of it was too chaotic. There was more like witchcraft and crime and sort of like the dark side of Edinburgh. If you've read that one though, please let me know what you thought. Putting the criticism aside and let's talk favorites. Maybe I'll do it in the order that I read them. So yeah, I read about 35 books this year. I have 7 favorites from that. Started off the year with a banger. I listened to the audiobook of this one, but I do have the physical copy, which has a gorgeous cover, Booker Prize winner, Prophet Song. It is horrendous, but if you're able to stomach it, this is a really great book to read. In the current times, set in Dublin, but it feels like a precursor to 1984. It's like how a country can slip into like a totalitarian regime and how things can get taken away from you. And in the beginning it feels just a little annoying and a little scary, and then it just all falls apart. It also feels like a lot of the Second World War books that I read as a kid. So there's a lot of like teen fiction set during the occupation of the Netherlands in the Second World War and about the resistance, and it feels like reading something like that as well. The sort of sneaking around and trying to make it through checkpoints, and your passport suddenly can't get renewed and you're just losing all your rights. You're trying to look after the people that you love and you can't get a hold of them. It is very claustrophobic. I feel like it will stay with me for a really, really long time. Also, I think sometimes a Booker win can make, at least for myself and my reading taste, it could scare me off a little bit, but I think this is like a stunning and very accessible book. I listened to Jane Austen at Home by Lucy Worsley and read by Lucy Worsley as well, and I really enjoyed it. It's my first time reading anything by her. It felt very personal and warm and exciting, and it's about, you know, Jane Austen's life and the different places where she lived. Having reread/read all of the Austen books in the last few years and going to the Jane Austen Festival every year, it just added a lot of depth, and I feel like I could possibly read it again in the future. This is one that I actually originally read physically, The Secret History. I feel like this book almost needs no introduction. It's set at a New England college, and there is a student who's sort of trying to hide that he's not as well off as other fellow students are, and he wants to join a class of students who are studying classics with this one particular professor. There are these mysterious characters, and he works his way in and sort of befriends them. It turns out that something dark has happened, and it's quite a meandering book, but I do feel like there is enough action, enough character study, enough going on. It has a bit of the lavish lifestyle and extravagance and really interesting and kind of messed up characters. Very atmospheric, and this time I listened to the audiobook read by the author. In my group of friends, this divides opinions. Some people love it, some people actively dislike it. And I enjoyed it as a new experience of the book, and it was, because I'd read it before, it was one that I could kind of just have on in the background, but it was nice to go through the book again and sort of remind myself what it was like. Great autumnal or winter read. And even if you've never read it before, I think the audiobook would be a great choice as well. I engaged with almost all of Eliza Clark's books this year. So unfortunately DNFed Penance. I read boy parts in audio, which was read by Liza Clark, but my favorite of the year was She's Always Hungry, which is the short story collection. Also listened to the audiobook with a mixed group of narrators. There was a fisherman's town story that I loved. There was a bit of sci-fi, which was interesting. It was like a really interesting mix. I think I have quite a good track record with reading messed up, dark short story collections. I have a few on my shelves. I should read more. I think I listened to it in maybe 2 days, but would highly recommend. Very fun. Then there was one that I don't know what I was expecting from it, but if you've watched my channel for a longer time, you will know that I've read lots of Louise O'Neill's books. I also have a video where I've interviewed Louise O'Neill, and this is a book that I'd had on my shelves for a while. I am not a crime reader. I'm currently reading a bunch of crime. I read a lot of them this year for some research that I'll talk to you about at the end of this video. So I'm just trying it out, and I thought, okay, this is the time to read this. I thought that I remembered this kind of being related to West Cork. There was like a documentary and a podcast that I listened to. Like, I was very intrigued by it, about a murder that happened in West Cork. So this has an Irish setting as well, and there are some similarities with like a camera crew coming to do a documentary and like a small town murder that's happened. So I can see how it was inspired by it. I just thought it was going to be even more directly inspired. This is set on a small Irish island where there is a wealthy family that's sort of come in and built a resort and has affected that small community in a big way. They've like offered them different housing, and they've sort of taken over the whole island. And then a single mom who's had lots of experience with domestic violence and has worked at like a domestic violence charity marries into this family and has this like very sort of powerful, attractive husband. And a young local girl is murdered and was connected to this family, and it is about the documentary crew coming onto the island and trying to unravel this. But what it is more about is different shapes of domestic violence. So this book really gives you an insight in like the really subtle manipulation that can happen. It's not so much about like who committed the murder as it is about the discussion of like class and location and relationships. I was very captivated by it. It was done so well. The Governesses by Anne Serra, translated from French by Mark Hutchinson. It was published in the 90s. It's this tiny novella. I carried this with me everywhere. Like, the corners of this book have started to wear off. I was really intrigued by this cover, like snakes and ladders. I think I maybe bought this in my local bookshop actually. So last year I read some Angela Carter and really enjoyed it, and it feels kind of like that. It is a fever dream. It's 3 young governesses. Is it set in the 1700s or the 1940s? You can't really tell. It is sort of out of time. These 3 young beautiful governesses sort of seem to run the household. Sometimes they go into the garden and stumble upon a man and eat him alive. There is a sort of peeping Tom neighbor that they sort of put on a show for from time to time. It's like all these interesting power dynamics and voyeurism and sort of weird fairy tale like happenings. So if you like Angela Carter and you aren't really looking for a story with like a beginning, middle and end, then this could be quite interesting. And then finally something not totally different. It is a poetry collection by Seamus Heaney, and it is North. When I went to Dublin a few years ago, there was a really cool exhibition. I think it's still on. I'd read a Seamus Heaney collection at university for my literature degree, and then not really read much since. But the woman who was working in the gift shop of the exhibition, they had all the Faber editions out, and I was like, where should I begin? And she gave me 3. The pitch for this sounded so good. I read this on December 31st. I read out most of it to my partner, who is Irish, and it was quite a fun experience. This is kind of based on the Northern European experience. There's like some Scandinavian influences, some mythology, then there's a lot about like Irish politics and history, but the majority of the poems are about bog bodies. One of the reviews on Storygraph said, Seamus at his boggiest and heeniest moments. I've read part of one of his other collections where it's a lot of like squelching and water and swamp, and it definitely had some aspects of this. And I loved how the themes sort of like slowly crossed over into each other. Had to look up so many words. You think you're fluent in a language, and then you read some poetry and you're like, I've got the vibe, but I need to look up some words. Same with the politics. I think you can very much read this and just sort of go through it and pick up the atmosphere, and you will be able to pick out the general meaning of things, but then it's also fun to go back and look up some extra bits. My last read of the year, and definitely my last read of the year with the prediction of me thinking, I think this could be a favorite. And it was. So those are my favorites of the year. Let me know if you've read any of them and what you thought. I have big reading plans, as I always do, for this year. I'm currently working on writing a non-fiction book, just a project of my own at the moment. I do not have an agent or a publishing deal for it. It is a literary travel guide to the UK and Ireland, and I've been working on it for about 2 years now, and especially in the last 6 months I've been taking it very seriously, and I'm hoping to finish a first draft of the manuscript this year. One of the things I need to do for it is a lot of very specific reading, and especially location-based reading. These books here, this is always my like TBR on the mantelpiece, has a bunch of really good, it's like great poetry, a lot of historical fiction that is really well regarded. I have the potential to have an amazing reading year next year, getting around to a lot of books that are like 10 years old, 15 years old, finally getting around to reading some of those. Hopefully I can document that in some part as well. Definitely check out my Instagram and TikTok as well if you want to see more stuff from me, and I hope you have a good reading year. Doei!